Okay, madam, you can go ahead.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Right.
Good evening, children. I am Dr. Usha, Professor and HOD, Department of Microbiology from Annapurna Medical College, Salem, Tamil Nadu. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening. So today we will be starting with immunology, and the first session will be dealing with infection and immunity. So you know infection and immunity. So my method of teaching will be, we will go through all the theoretical part of the topic, and finally we'll go to the you know infection and immunity go hand in hand, and they have a great interaction within, and these two interact between the animal body and the infecting organism. And there are many types of infection based upon the duration, the localization, and many aspects, of which the most commonest which we come across, we call it as either acute infection or chronic infection. Acute infections are those which are by sudden onset with rapid progression with severe symptoms, and the duration will be within a week or so. But chronic infection may be extend from months onwards, and it is an infection characterized by delayed onset and slow progression. And you know, there are primary infections and secondary infections based upon whether the infection is for the first time in a healthy individual, or if the same infection occurs for the second time, then you call it as a secondary infection. Also, say for example, a person is suffering from viral infection and he succumbs to a bacterial infection along with it, it is called as a secondary bacterial infection. And there are, based upon the localization, it is called as either a localized infection or a systemic infection. Localized infection means it is restricted to a specific location or region within the body of the host. Whereas systemic, you know very well, it has spread to several regions or areas in the body of the host. And based upon the presentation, it has been classified into clinical, subclinical, and atypical infection. Clinical infection, you know, where you have an obvious, observable, or a detectable symptom. Whereas there are many subclinical infections where they do not show the classical clinical features, but only with very few or even sometimes no obvious symptoms may occur. And typical infection, they typically have a clinical presentation. And you know, there are atypical presentations of various infections. For example, in COVID, we were all thinking that it is only a respiratory pathogen, but it presents with various presentations, especially they say COVID-2, and patients, though it is a respiratory virus, patients have nausea and diarrhea, isn't it? So these are all the atypical types of presentation, and they are called as atypical infection. And opportunistic, you know, they are infections which occur only when the immune system is compromised. When the immune system is stable, they do not get infection. One classical example is your HIV, which causes an immunocompromised state, and they are susceptible to many bacterial, viral, parasitic, and fungal infections. And based upon the where the infection comes from, it is classified into cross infection, nosocomial, and iatrogenic. Cross infection is infection from any other host or an external host. Whereas nosocomial, you know, they usually occur within the hospital setup. For example, a catheter-induced urinary tract infection. And same way, iatrogenic infections are those which are introduced by the clinician due to some invasive procedure. One classical simple example may be your injection abscess, which occurs due to the infection of the tip of the needle. And these are about the types of infection. Now coming to the sources of infection. The common sources of infection to humans are humans only. And there are various types of people who can transmit the infection, and they are called as carriers. A person who harbors the pathogenic organism but without suffering from illness is called as a carrier. They may be classified into healthy carriers who harbor the pathogen but they never suffer from the disease. Temporary carriers are those who carry the virus or bacteria for less than 6 months. And chronic carriers who have the organism from beyond 6 months to even years together. And one classical example for this chronic carrier is your typhoid Mary. The same way she was also a classical example of a healthy carrier. And contact carriers, when you acquire infection from a patient, it is called as a contact carrier. And paradoxical carrier is when you acquire infection from another carrier or a healthy carrier, it is called as a paradoxical carrier. Then animals, they act as a very good source of infection. And one classical example is the pandemic which is going on, namely COVID. They say it has been, there are so many theories that it was from bat, it was from anteaters, etc. So animals, usually to these infections, animals are usually immune to those viral or bacterial infection. But when we humans come into contact with these animal viruses or animal infection, we are genetically not able to prevent the infection due to our genetic constitution. So we get infection, and these diseases transmitted from animals to humans are called as zoonotic diseases. Classical example is the rats may transmit plague and dogs may transmit rabies as well as hydatid disease, and cats very well in toxoplasmosis. So there are various animals which can transmit so many diseases. A few examples I have shared. And next is insects. The insects are those which are blood-sucking insects, and they are called as arthropod-borne diseases. And these insects which transmit the infection, they are called as vectors. They may be biological vectors or mechanical vectors. Mechanical vectors are vectors who just carry the infection from one place to another. The classical example is your domestic fly, which may transmit typhoid infection from an infected feces. Whereas biological vectors are vectors where the life cycle of the parasite is undergoing in that particular vector. Classical example is mosquito in malaria, where mosquito acts as a definitive host intermediate host, where the asexual cycle of the malarial parasite takes place. And these are called as the biological vectors. And soil and water, you very well know, they act as a source of infection. And the classical example is your tetanus spores. These spores are highly heat resistant. They're highly resistant to all the environmental conditions. So they remain in the soil for quite a long time. And when they come across a suitable environment, say for example, when we come across a road traffic accident and the soil which contains the tetanus spores enters the wound, they start gaining the nutrition from the tissue, dead tissue especially, and they germinate and cause infection. The same way, spores of Histoplasma capsulatum and spores of Nocardia asteroides. Whereas water, they may act as a source of infection in typhoid, cholera, and guinea worm infestation also. And food, you know very well. You use the terminology of food poisoning. It is mainly due to either the organism or the toxins produced by the organism. And one classical example is your staphylococcal food poisoning, which occurs within 6 hours of ingestion of an infected food. And either a pre-existing infection, for example, as in case of salmonellosis. So these are the sources of infection which can transmit infection to the humans. Then coming to the methods of transmission, they are inhalation, ingestion, inoculation, congenital, iatrogenic, and laboratory induced. Inhalation, you know very well, it is mainly spread by droplets. One classical example is our pandemic SARS-CoV-2, and ingestion by food particles, and inoculation either by the bite of the arthropods, and congenital from mother to fetus, iatrogenic in a hospital setup, which is induced by a physician or by any invasive procedure, And laboratory induced, especially in this COVID situation, we are to set up the biosafety level 2 laboratory, where the infection is prevented due to the HEPA filter present everywhere within the laboratory. So these are the modes of transmission of infection from one person to another. And coming to the pathogenicity of infection, this pathogenicity of any organism is the ability of a microbe to produce a disease. And what do you mean by virulence? It is the degree of pathogenicity. The same bacteria may be virulent or avirulent, and there will be some structural part of the bacteria which may contribute to this virulence. For example, if you take Streptococcus pneumoniae, it is a capsulated organism, and this capsule is said to be the main part which provides virulence to the organism. A non-capsulated form will not produce disease, but only the capsulated form may produce pneumonia in case of Streptococcus pneumoniae. And exhalation is enhancement of the virulence. There are various methods in the laboratory where you can enhance the virulence, especially when you prepare a vaccine. And attenuation is reduction of virulence, especially these attenuated vaccines or attenuated strains are mainly incorporated in vaccines so that it produces immunity, but it does not produce the disease as such in the individual. So this is regarding pathogenicity of an organism. And there are various determinants of virulence like adhesion, invasiveness, toxigenicity, and enzymes. Adhesion is every organism, it has a specific receptor to go and get itself attached to. For example, if you have sore throat due to a viral infection, or you take up even this HIV infection, it needs CD4 molecule receptors to get itself adhered to. Only then it can cause infection. If you do not have the CD4 molecule receptors, the HIV can never enter a human system. The same way, invasiveness. Invasiveness may be due to mainly either toxin production or enzymes. For example, hyaluronidase is an enzyme which digests the tissues and the tendons. So it liquefies that portion of tissue and enhances the spread of infection from one place to the adherent place. The same way, toxins. Say for example, an organism is infected in the thigh. It produces toxins, and if it is a gram-positive organism, it will produce an exotoxin. If it is a gram-negative organism, it will produce endotoxin. So each toxin, they have specific functions to based upon which you develop clinical features. So these are all the determinants of virulence for a bacteria. So coming to endotoxins and exotoxins, as I said, endotoxins are mainly produced by gram-negative bacilli, and exotoxins are usually produced by gram-positive organisms. So what are the properties of endotoxin and exotoxin? Endotoxin, it is the lipopolysaccharide. So it is lipopolysaccharide is one of the integral part of the cell wall of a gram-negative organism. Whereas exotoxins are proteins which are not the integral part of the cell wall or the structure of the bacteria. It is produced by the organism. And endotoxins are heat stable when compared to exotoxins which are heat labile. And endotoxin, as I said, is a part of the cell wall, whereas exotoxins are actively secreted by the cells. And endotoxins, they do not have any enzymatic action. But in contrast, exotoxins have an enzymatic action. And endotoxins, they are active usually in very large doses, whereas exotoxins are active even in very minute doses of even microliters. And endotoxins are weakly antigenic, whereas exotoxins are highly antigenic. So these are the differences. This difference you have to be thorough because there are many MCQs asked like these are the properties of endotoxins except. These are the properties of exotoxins except. So you should be thorough with this differentiation between endotoxin and exotoxin. So with that we finish infection. Now moving on to immunity. Can anyone tell what is immunity? Any one of you can unmute.
Resistance to infection.
Oh, very good. It is resistance to infection. So this resistance to infection may be classified into innate immunity and acquired immunity. Innate immunity is the immunity which is by genetic constitution present in an individual. He does not gain the immunity. It is present from birth onwards. It may be non-specific or specific. Whereas acquired immunity, the immunity is derived or he gains immunity after being exposed to an organism, which is in turn classified into active and passive. Active acquired immunity, where the organism activates the immune system, whereas in passive acquired immunity, we are artificially introducing the immunity to the individual. So immunity is classified into innate and acquired in turn is classified into active and passive immunity. So what are all the structures in the human system which provides innate immunity? All the physiochemical barriers like your epithelial surfaces and mucosal surfaces, they provide native immunity or innate immunity. It doesn't need any stimulation. It is there every time. Once the organism enters, immediately it comes to attack the organism. And humoral factors, especially the antibacterial substances which is present in blood, is the complement. Of the complement, you know there are two complement pathways, the classical and the alternate complement pathway. But the alternate complement pathway is a part of innate immunity, but the classical complement pathway is a part of active immunity. And cellular factors like these macrophages and NK cells, they are present anywhere, everywhere in the body to immediately attack to the bacteria. And in the skin, the sebaceous secretions which contains the unsaturated fatty acid is responsible for this antibacterial property, and the salt concentration in the sweat. The same way in the respiratory tract, the nasal hair, it engulfs the dust particles which enters your nose. Then the mucus within, as you enter deeper into your respiratory tract, will engulf the organism. And the cilia which is present in the bronchi and the respiratory tract, they will also engulf the foreign body or any bacteria which enters in. And cough reflex and the phagocytes, the alveolar phagocytes, they also act as a mode of innate immunity. And in the gastrointestinal tract, the saliva, the gastric acid and the colonic bacteria, all these three provide innate immunity to an individual. And you know very well the conjunctiva, the tears, which contains an enzyme called as lysozyme, is a highly antibacterial substance. And in the genitourinary tract, the urine, with the flushing action of urine itself will prevent infection. Semen and the vaginal secretions, all of these have a minimal amount of antibacterial substances which prevent the infection. And coming to the humoral and cellular factors, as I said in humoral factors, the alternate complement pathway, the classical pathway is not an example of innate immunity, it is the alternate complement pathway. And the acute phase protein, which is produced by the liver cells, also acts as one of the innate immune mechanism. And cellular factors like phagocytes and NK cells. And coming to the difference between active and passive immunity. Active immunity, the immune system is active, whereas in passive immunity, there is no active participation of the immune system. Whereas active immunity is induced by infection or an immunogen, either a bacteria or a virus or a parasite or a fungi. Whereas passive immunity, we artificially introduce ready-made antibodies into the system. And active immunity, it starts only after a lag period. Usually this lag period is between 1 week to 2 weeks. Whereas the passive immunity is transient and it is very less effective, and the immunity starts as soon as the antisera enters the human system. There is no lag period. In active immunity, you have memory present. What do you mean memory? Say first time I get infected with bacteria, say staphylococci, all the T cells or B cells which are produced against this bacteria, out of which few of them will be converted to memory cells. These memory cells, they remember the antigenic structure of this staphylococci and they are present in pockets here and there. Once I get infection once again with the same staphylococcal species, all these memory cells immediately come into action to tackle the organism. Whereas passive immunity, there is no memory present, and active immunity, there is a negative phase, there is no negative phase in case of passive immunity. And coming to active natural immunity, as I said, active, so it activates the immune system, and natural immunity. So natural means naturally you get infected with the organism. So it may be either due to clinical or subclinical infection. And immunity due to this active natural is usually long lasting. And certain infections provides lifelong immunity, like examples measles and chickenpox. And premonition is a special type of immunity in syphilis and malaria, where this immunity is present from the genetic constitution itself. Especially this malaria, this South Africans, they have a genes in them who do not get infected with malaria, and they say that genes itself can protect them from getting infected with COVID also. Coming to active artificial. So here too, the immune system is activated, but by an artificial mean. What is this artificial mean? It is by introduction of a vaccine. So vaccines, there may be classified into live vaccines or killed vaccine, subunit. There are various categories of vaccines. The basic difference based upon the immunity, route of administration, immunogenicity and dose, immunity lasts for several years in case of live vaccine because it is live. So it will produce a subclinical infection. So there will be many memory cells within the system which remembers the infection, and so the immunity lasts for several years. Whereas killed vaccine, the immunity is very short-lived, and the route of administration may be oral or parenteral is available for live vaccine, but killed vaccine, oral administration is not at all effective. And coming to immunogenicity, live vaccine is more immunogenic when compared to killed vaccine, which is less immunogenic. And the dose, live vaccine, a single dose is sufficient, but for killed vaccine, booster doses are required. So as I said, examples of live vaccine is your BCG, oral polio, measles, and MMR. Whereas killed vaccine, cholera vaccine, and Salk vaccine for polio. And subunit vaccine is a vaccine where only a portion of the part of the bacteria or the virus is taken, instead of the whole bacteria or virus being introduced into the vaccine. So this classical example is your hepatitis B vaccine and your typhoid VI vaccine. And toxoid is the attenuated form of toxin, which is usually used for tetanus and diphtheria. And coming to passive immunity, here we do not activate the immune system. We passively introduce the immunity usually by means of administering the ready-made antibodies. They may be classified into natural passive and artificial passive. Natural passive immunity is derived from the mother to the child, because you know the transplacental barrier, it transmits everything from the mother to the fetus. So the antibodies from the mother is transmitted to the child. Whereas artificial passive, you administer ready-made antibodies. So the agents which are commonly used for this artificial passive are hyperimmune sera. Few people, they may react in exuberant way for any infection, and the antibody titer will be high in those samples. So that is why now they have introduced this plasma treatment for COVID, which mainly contains the antibodies to SARS-CoV-2. And convalescent sera is the one which is used now, and pooled human gamma globulin. Antibodies are nothing but gamma globulin. So these are the agents which are commonly used for the artificial passive immunity. And apart from this, there are specific immunoglobulins available for specific organism. And usually these specific immunoglobulins are derived or taken from recently immunized individuals, convalescent people, and from pooled sera. It is available for tetanus, hepatitis B, diphtheria, botulism, rabies, and measles. Many are still there. The list continues. And non-specific immunoglobulins are pooled human immunoglobulins collected from a large number of healthy donors with the antibody to the same organism. So that is about artificial passive immunity. And you know there is a terminology called as herd immunity, which is nothing, it is but the overall immunity of the community. When herd immunity is good, epidemics are liable to occur. Sorry, when herd immunities are low, epidemics occur. But when herd immunity is good, the immunity is very, the transmission rate is reduced. That is why even for COVID, they are telling once we attain a herd immunity of about 60 to 70%, the pandemic will come down. And one of the classical example of gaining this herd immunity is your pulse polio immunization, which we have already succeeded. And eradication of communicable disease depends mainly on the development of high level of herd immunity. So with this, we complete all the theoretical part in infection and immunity. Any doubts? No doubts. Then I think everyone should answer. You can unmute yourself and you can answer. Hmm. 1 second. Okay, now we'll go to the questions. Rapid but non-antigen specific immune responses are produced by the adaptive immune system, innate immune system, lymphatic system, memory response. Which one is the answer? Rapid non-antigen specific immune responses. You can answer, even if it is wrong, you don't bother. Anyone? Mohan?
Innate
Yes.
immune system.
Innate immune system. Very good. Because it is not antigen specific and it is rapid. So it is mainly as a genetic constitution of the individual. So it is innate immune system. So innate immune system is the correct answer. Jenner, the second question, Jenner observed that milkmaids who were infected with cowpox were later immune to smallpox infections. This is an example of acquired immunity of barrier skin cells, active immunization with the non-related organism that causes similar symptoms, memory response to a cross-reactive antigen, passive immunization from contact with cow's milk antibodies. Which is the answer?
Memory response to
Memory
cross-reactive
response
antigen.
to the cross-reactive.
Antigens. Very good. So smallpox he identified only when his milk boy who was milking the cows did not develop the disease because he had cowpox lesions in his hand, and so due to the cross-reacting antigen he developed immunity regard to the pox virus. The third question, which situation below describes an example of innate immunity? Antibody production by plasma cells, antigen removal by cilia in the respiratory tract, complement activation by antibody bound to the surface of bacterium, memory response to influenza virus. Which one?
Antigen removal by cilia and respiratory tract.
Very good. Why not C? Why not C? Why? As I said, complement, there are two complement pathways. One is the classical complement pathway and the other is the alternate complement pathway. Classical complement pathway is usually initiated only when there is an antigen-antibody reaction. Whereas the alternate classical pathway, it doesn't need any activation. It is always present active within the system, which will react to any foreign body entering the system. Is it clear? So complement activation by an antibody bound to the surface of a bacterium, it will stimulate only the classical complement pathway, and only the alternate complement pathway is an example of innate immunity. Okay. So, as I said, the alternate pathway of the complement activates spontaneously. Classical is a type of specific active immunity. Is it clear? Okay. Fourth question. Immunity in the respiratory tract depends on which of the following? Lactoferrin, macrophages, lysozyme, locally produced IgD.
Hello.
Pardon?
Join phone.
Anyone? Is it the lysozyme, macrophages? Macrophages. Okay, very good. It is the alveolar macrophages because the respiratory tract is protected by microbial assault by not only alveolar macrophages, the mucociliary blanket, as well as the locally produced antibodies from malt and sensitized lymphocytes. And IgD as such does not have any microbicidal action. Sir, someone can unmute mute yourself. So, which of the following is a characteristic of innate immunity? B cell activation, complement participation, long induction time, non-specificity.
Non-specificity.
Anyone else?
Long induction time.
Long induction time. Okay. Non-specificity is correct. See, innate immunity, it acts immediately. It doesn't have any induction time or a negative lag phase or nothing. It acts immediately. Is it clear? B cell activation needs an antigen-antibody complex, and complement participation, especially in this classical, you need antigen-antibody, and non-specificity is the classical characteristic of innate immunity. Following are killed vaccines except TAB, Salk polio vaccine, cholera vaccine, measles vaccine. Which is a live vaccine otherwise?
Measles, ma'am.
Yes, very good. Okay, then which of the following immunity is relevant in control of epidemic diseases?
Herd immunity.
Herd immunity.
Very good. Very good. Which of the following is not the character of killed vaccine? Oral route is not effective, requires more than 2 doses, less immunogenic, longer duration of protection.
Longer duration of protection.
Longer duration of protection.
Yes, very good. So now I think you know the concept of live vaccine and a killed vaccine. Which of the following is a polyvalent vaccine? What do you mean by a polyvalent vaccine? Don't know. A polyvalent vaccine is a vaccine which contains 2 or 3 strains of the same organism. Of which is it Hib vaccine, rabies, mumps, or the OPV vaccine? Anyone? Am I audible? Hello? Anyone, even if it is wrong, you don't bother. We will discuss and find out the correct answer. Anyone voting
OPV one.
for OPV? Anyone else? No, okay. You are correct. The oral polio vaccine is an example of a polyvalent vaccine because it contains, one second. It contains the 3 antigenic types of polio virus within the same vaccine. That is why it is called as a polyvalent vaccine. Okay. Following are the characters of active immunity except effective only after a lag period, transient protection, immunological memory, immune system is activated.
Transient protection.
Transient protection.
Transient protection is a classical feature of which immunity? Passive immunity. So you all of you are correct. Very good. Active immunity is not acquired by infection, vaccination, immunoglobulin transfer, subclinical infection.
Immunoglobulin transfer.
Very good. Because infection, vaccination and subclinical infection, all these 3 will activate the immune system. Thereby it is active immunity. Very good. Lysozyme is present in the following secretions of the body except lacrimal secretion, the cerebrospinal fluid, saliva, respiratory tract secretions. Which does not contain the lysozyme, which is a part of innate immunity.
Respiratory tract.
Respiratory tract. Anyone else? It is the cerebrospinal fluid. This cerebrospinal fluid does not contain lysozyme. Lysozyme is present in more or less all tissue fluids and nearly all secretions except CSF, sweat and urine. These are the only 3 secretions which will not contain lysozyme. Whereas all other secretions, your gastrointestinal secretion, everything will contain the lysozyme, which is a part of innate immunity. Is it clear? Okay, the primary purpose of adaptive immune system is to block all pathogens from entering the body, kill tumor cells, protect from disease upon reinfection with the specific pathogen, Reject foreign transplants. No idea. Shall we go to the answer?
Options.
Option? Sorry, the last one is D.
C.
Protect from, C is the answer. Protect from disease upon reinfection with a specific pathogen is the purpose of this adaptive immune system. Okay. All of the following are a part of innate immunity except complement, NK cells, macrophages, T cells. Which one? I have not mentioned this option anywhere in my lecture today.
Complement, sir.
Complement. Complement is a part of innate immunity, no?
T cells.
T cell.
Very good. T cells. The complement, NK cells, macrophages, all these are a part of innate immunity. T cells will get activated only upon interaction with an antigen. Is it clear? The T cells, they have an MHC complex, the major histocompatibility complex, and the antigen has to be presented by the antigen presenting cell. Only then the T cells will get activated. Is it clear? So, T cells is the answer. So that is what I have given. The alternate complement pathway serves as a non-specific innate immune mechanism. Whereas the classical is not under innate. It will be under active immune mechanism. Is it clear? Okay. Which of the following is example of artificial passive immunity? Administration of anti-tetanus serum, administration of live vaccine, administration of killed vaccine, transfer of maternal antibodies to fetus.
Anti-tetanus.
Option A. Anti-tetanus.
Administration of ATS. Very good. Okay. Then passive immunization relies upon the use of bacterial polysaccharides, toxoids, vaccines, antibodies.
Toxoids.
Toxoids. What are toxoids? Toxoids are the attenuated forms of the toxins. They are in the form of vaccine. So vaccine will never be a passive immunization. It is only the antibodies, the ready-made antibodies are the classical example for passive immunization. Okay. So antibodies. So passive immunization consists of donation of immunity from donor to the recipient of the antibodies. Whereas bacterial polysaccharides, toxoids and vaccines are agents used to induce active immunity in the recipient. Now coming to examples of nosocomial infection. What is COTI? Can you expand these abbreviations which I have given?
Urinary tract infection.
CA?
Community acquired, I think, ma'am.
Catheter
Community
associated.
acquired.
Catheter associated urinary tract infection. CLBSI? Central line bloodstream infection. VAP? Ventilator associated pneumonia. So, what is the answer for this?
All of the above.
All of the above. So, these are the three common hospital acquired infection which are induced by our physicians. Okay. So, this is the abbreviation for that. Examples of latent infection include herpes zoster, HIV, SSPE, all of the above. What do you mean by SSPE?
Subacute sclerosing parenchyma.
Very good. What is it due to?
Mum, some measles.
What is measles, mumps?
Respiratory tract infection.
Measles is respiratory tract infection. SSPE,
Due to mumps, I think.
it is due to measles virus, which is a progressive neurological disorder which occurs in children especially. And it mainly affects the central nervous system. And it is actually a slow, persistent viral infection caused by defective latent virus in the central nervous system. Okay. So, which is the answer? Herpes zoster, HIV or SSPE or all of the above?
SSP.
All of the above. One classical, when you say latent infection, the first infection which comes to your mind should be herpes zoster. Is it clear? Herpes is different. Herpes viral infection occurs, and this herpes virus, they become latent in the neurons and they get activated under certain circumstances and they produce shingles. Okay, that is what is one of the classical example of latent virus, herpes zoster. HIV is also a latent virus. It is present within the CD4 positive T cell. What is the incubation period of HIV? It is very long, is it not? That is mainly because of the latency. The same way SSPE also, following immunization, this virus will be present. Measles is a live vaccine, virus vaccine. It stays in the central nervous system and it manifests after a very long time under certain situations. So all of the above is the answer for this latent infection. Okay. All are examples of healthy carriers except viral hepatitis, rheumatic fever, diphtheria, meningococcal meningitis. Which one? Shall we go to the answer? Rheumatic fever is not transmitted by healthy carriers. What is rheumatic fever? What is it due to?
Staphylococcus.
Staphylococcal. It is streptococcal. It is a non-suppurative complication of streptococcal infection. This is mainly due to the cross-reacting antigens. The same streptococci, in its structure, it contains the cell wall, cell membrane, and few other structures based upon which and we in our human body, we have similar antigens like your cardiac valves, your cartilages in the joints. So when you get infected with streptococci, antibodies produced against these structures present in streptococci will also damage the heart and the joints. That is why you get the migratory arthritis and rheumatic heart disease. It is mainly because of a non-suppurative complication of streptococcal infection. Is it clear? Okay. All are zoonotic disease except plague, rabies, toxoplasmosis, malaria.
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 Malaria is an arthropod-borne disease. All are true of exotoxins except lipopolysaccharide, enzymatic action, highly antigenic, active in minute doses. Which is wrong?
Lipopolysaccharide.
Lipopolysaccharide.
So exotoxins are chemically, what are they?
Protein.
Proteins. Very good. So lipopolysaccharide is the answer. All are true of endotoxins except heat stable, obtained by cell lysis, can be neutralized by antibody, integral part of cell wall. Which is heat stable? Exotoxin or endotoxin? Endotoxins are heat stable. So it cannot be neutralized by antibody as in case of exotoxins. And endotoxin, I said it is a lipopolysaccharide which is an integral part of the cell wall. So it can be obtained only on cell lysis. Whereas exotoxins will be secreted by the organism. Okay. So with that we finish today's session.
Okay, madam.
Okay, sir.
No.
Students, do you
Stop
have
recording,
any doubts regarding this topic?
No, ma'am.
No. Okay. I will give you my email ID.